benefited growth in the stock market won't be as impressed. But they're not the ones who need help right now.
Well, let's turn to how Joe Biden is going to tackle foreign policy. And this week he described his ambitions on the international stage at his inauguration ceremony.
We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges.
Let me also bring in Julie Norman from University College London. Julie, do you think there's going to be much of a change in terms of foreign policy?
Well, Graham, I think there will, mainly in the tone and the approach that we see this administration take. As we heard Biden say, one of his first priorities is simply to restore U.S. relations, re-engage with allies, which for Biden is something he enjoys. He has a lot of close personal relationships with many other world leaders from his time as vice president and Senate, but also rejoining international institutions. We saw in this first flurry of executive orders rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, stopping the U.S. withdrawal from the WHO. So really going first and foremost for those international institutions that marry up with the crises that Biden sees as most pressing right now.
Will these be quite straightforward to rejoin some of these international organizations? And also, do you feel that President Trump perhaps forfeited quite a bit of trust and that will take quite some time to rebuild?
Well, a little bit of both. Again, some of these agreements that we're seeing now are ones that can be rejoined simply by executive order. They don't need any kind of Senate confirmation. So rejoining Paris is pretty straightforward. Stopping the withdrawal from WHO is pretty straightforward. And I think in terms of restoring relations with allies, again, this is something that sure took a battering under Trump, but most other world leaders, especially allies in Europe, know Biden and know Biden pretty well. And so I think he'll have a bit easier time of it than someone just coming in completely fresh.
In domestic policy, Julie, in areas like COVID, obviously we're seeing a huge difference in approach. Would it be fair, though, to say that in terms of foreign policy, we're likely to see rather less of a handbrake turn in some areas and something which looks more like continuity? I'm thinking here of policies in relation to Venezuela, Ukraine, Israel, and perhaps even China.
That's exactly right. You know, what I think we'll see a bit more of is a change in style and substance in some of these key areas. China, really most notably, the Trump administration went out pretty hard with a tough on China approach. We can expect the Biden administration to also stay tough on China, especially on security, technology concerns, as well as human rights concerns, but probably in a way that's, again, a bit more coordinated with our allies and a bit more using soft power and diplomacy instead of just words and tweets and whatnot that we saw a bit from the Trump administration. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wonder if I could bring Scott here. Do you think in terms of the unity message that maybe Biden will effectively, if he pursues a policy of continuity in many of his foreign policy areas, he might effectively be admitting that Trump got some things right?
No, because I think that while Julie's right that the issues continue. Well, I think because while Julie's right that the issues continue, I think there's a fundamental change which are the rules of the game. And that is, you know, there are issues regarding China. There's military issues, there's economic issues, but simply declaring a trade war, which has cost America about $3 trillion in current or potential income, running hot and cold on whether he likes or doesn't like President Xi Jinping, Trump was unpredictable. With the Biden folks, you're going to get negotiations. There'll be firm negotiations, but the Chinese will know the rules. Same thing with Iran, where Trump shredded the nuclear agreement back in 2018. It'll be tough to get back to that agreement, but the Iranians know who they're dealing with. And think about an issue like with North Korea. You know, Trump, fire and fury one year, I love Kim Jong-un the next. That unpredictability in foreign affairs, that's one of the most damaging things to diplomacy and security. And the Biden folks might not agree with their policies and their lines at times, but you know where they're coming from.
It was just that, Antony Blinken this week commended Trump for being right in taking a tougher approach to China. So it does sound as if the policy with regards to China, at least, will continue to be one of confrontation.
I think, the overriding issue that's there is the fact that China is providing an alternative economic system through the Belt and Road Initiative. That initiative has even reached to Europe with countries like Italy. There is a question for the Biden administration on how you deal with that. Do you actually see economic benefits for both? Or will there be, in effect, a win-lose situation? There's the military situation in China's backyard, as it were, how you deal with that. And we have to remember there are human rights issues, such as the Uyghur population in re-education camps in the Northwest and the crackdown on Hong Kong. So I think the issues are the continuity here. There are challenges there. Trump's approach, look, let's leave him in peace in Mar-a-Lago in Florida and hope that we've got the adults back in the room.
Julie, how do you see the US's approach to China changing or indeed staying the same?
Well, I think Scott is exactly right here, that we will see the pressures continuing, but in a way that's much more predictable. I think one of the outgoing moves by the Trump administration with labeling the situation with the Uyghurs in China as a genocide is something that Antony Blinken has said he also supports. So I actually give Blinken some credit for giving credit where credit's due with some of these policies going out the door. But again, the trickier part with Trump was how back and forth it was, how some days it was showing this very strong personal support, other days doubling down on the trade war. And as Scott said, that predictability element will really come into play. And as well, again, working with our allies on approaching China and putting the pressure on from various points instead of going it alone.
To what extent, Scott, do you think Biden will focus on foreign affairs? I mean, the whole America First strategy with Trump did appear to play well with voters.
Well, I mean, there's one action I think we should note, which is very interesting, which is Biden has, getting back to the rules of the game on Russia, has already signaled, I want to expand the remaining nuclear treaty with Russia, but I want a full intelligence assessment on Russia's interference in elections, not just in the U.S., but in other countries, and its nerve agent attacks, including against an opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. But on the wider issue, the number of times that the world was mentioned in Joe Biden's speech on Wednesday, once, but it was a significant reference. America as a beacon to the world. The beacon to the world in this case is not on a specific case, on a specific country. It's that by taking control of issues at home, like coronavirus, like immigration, and by working with others on issues that concern both Americans and others, like climate change, that's where you try to rebuild an element. I would never say trust, but at least the idea that there can be progress now with America rather than it sort of going it alone, as we saw in the past 4 years.
What do you think about that, Julie?
Well, I think it's right in the sense that Biden is going to be aware that he needs to almost find a third way between Trump's isolationism and more Obama-era globalism. I mean, times have changed since Biden was a vice president. It's very clear that whatever foreign policy he pursues, he needs to marry that with speaking to the American working class. He's kicking off a Buy American campaign on Monday. So I think, as Scott noted, we'll see some pragmatism from this administration, marrying up what they see as very important foreign policy needs, but speaking very specifically to American worker needs at the same time.
Okay, Dr. Julie Norman from University College London, Scott Lucas from the University of Birmingham, and Frank Cogliano, Professor of History at Edinburgh University. Thank you to you all.
Now, she's the first person of colour and the first woman to hold the office of Vice President in America. But how big an influence will Kamala Harris have on policy? And will she open the door to high office for others from similar backgrounds? I'm joined now by the playwright and commentator Bonnie Greer. Good morning.
Morning.
So, just how significant do you think her taking office will be?
You know, I was sitting here trying to remember how she pronounced her name, first of all, because she corrected Justice Sotomayor when she gave the oath of office to her. And I'm trying to remember what she said. I think she said Kamala.
So, okay. I will try and get it right.
No. Well, I was just thinking myself, you know, so that's going to be the first thing that's going to be for the world to get used to, is how to say her name. But she's a president in training, and it's quite clear that this is what Joe is doing. And this is going to be a very interesting thing to observe.
That is interesting that you've just said that, because I thought that she had a lot of energy and confidence, didn't she, this week? So you very much think she is being groomed for a run in 2024?
Oh, I'd be surprised if Joe gets to 2024. You know, I really would. And I don't mean that he's going to become ill. I think he's pretty focused on the mission. He said that Charlottesville, that horrible march, that horrible racist, white supremacist march that happened in 2017 shocked him. And I think that if he feels that he's got to domestically recalibrate the states away from that mindset, away from their whole sort of trajectory. And she is the first example of that. And I think he may give it to her in the last year and let her run.
You've written, haven't you, that you can't be what you can't see. I mean, how much of an example for others do you think she might be?
Well, she's going to be an example and a big up for women like me who don't, walk around in long earrings and frilly clothes. That's for sure. Women are going to look like they're going to look, they mean business in the next 3 years. No shoulders, none of that stuff. And so visually, she's going to be amazing, the impact on her.
Is that important?
Oh, yes, indeed. Because, of course, as a woman, that the clothes we wear are what we project. I mean, it may sound like a frivolous thing that I'm saying, but really, women have to adjust to clothes. Everybody does. And the fact that there's a big row now over the Vogue cover, where Anna Wintour chose the shot that Kamala's people thought was the test shot, where she's wearing trainers. She puts that on the cover of Vogue. Everybody, including myself, are up in uproar because, of course, it's the silly picture. And so now they've changed the picture back to the one that her people thought she was going to take, which is the let's get down to business picture without the trainers. So all of these signals make a lot of sense, and we're going to stop talking about women's clothes. We just really are. And as she just doesn't, she's going to steer us away from that, as she shows us that, we have brains too, and we're going to be very, very busy.
Now, she was born in 1964. You've said that she is pure Generation Jones.
Oh, yes.
What is that, and why does it matter?
Generation Jones is a very slender generation that comes between late baby boomers and, I guess early or first generation, Generation X, like Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson's Generation Jones, too. They're people who were born at a time where their parents really wanted them to be successful in America, to go to the right schools, but also to kind of be normal. Because my generation, the boomers, we were starting to take the streets. And so I think this generation was really raised to kind of not sit on the sidelines, but, get into the system and make the change within the system. So she go, like Michelle Obama, they go to the right schools, they do all of that, but yet they still have a change and revolution on their minds as well.
Now, she clashed with her now boss during the Democratic nomination race.
I jumped at my skin there. Fright he gave me.